Hello and welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. Thank you very much for taking a little bit of your time and spending it here with us on NACTV. I'm Eoin Devereux, journalist with the Banner Press, welcoming you to this week's edition of the show, and joined this week by journalist Casper Wehrhahn. Casper, good to have you here this week.
Good to be here, and with a very big full paper for this week's show, and I have to say, Eoin, I'm very glad we were able to get it sent off before the storm on Wednesday decided to hit, because that was quite something, wasn't it?
That was a little bit of a storm. If you're in the Neepawa area or the surrounding area, you saw the storm that came rolling in on June the 12th there. Interesting thing, actually, you bring that up. I was going to our local home hardware, Casper, to get some preparation, some stuff and all that. And as I was driving, I looked into the distance into Minnedosa, and these, no word of a lie, and I've been around enough summers to have a good gauge of this. I saw the biggest, brightest, sharpest lightning strikes, like straight, like sharp lightning down to the ground. Two of them just like boom, boom, like that.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, oh geez, it's gonna be one of those days. But the weird thing about it is, though, we did have that storm that did come through, but I don't think we got the quote unquote worst of it at all.
I don't think so, no.
Genuine,
like
yeah.
it was pretty fast and hard there once it got going, but yeah, it seemed to pass by actually fairly quickly. I was a little worried. There was an event I was supposed to cover that's going to be featured probably in the upcoming paper. That same evening, I was like, should I not go? Like this started as a thunderstorm, and I literally just got a tornado warning. Like, is this gonna clear up? Is it gonna keep going? I don't know, but it all cleared up like maybe a couple hours after I had that thought. It was like maybe 6 or something like that, and yeah, it was all clear skies again.
You know what's kind of interesting? We're only a few blocks away from one another here in the community of Neepawa, but after the rain really hit hard, Casper, I found this unusual. I walked outside, and on the north side of the house, it was sunny. The sun was out, it was clear, but it was raining.
Yes, we had that too.
And seriously, legitimately, it felt like it was exactly halfway on my house. Because when I went to the south side, it was a little overcast on the south side, but it wasn't raining. I could take 5 or 6 steps, and it seemed to be the weirdest thing, actually. I've run across that before, but I've never sort of stood out in it and experienced it. It was really weird.
Yeah, I've yet to have that particular experience myself, and it's just such a fascinating thing to think about. Like, you know what happens, but to actually like be there and be like, okay, step to the right, nice and dry. Step to the left, oh, I got a shower.
Well, it was unusual weather, and fortunately we were able to avoid the worst of it. And speaking of unusual, it's unusual that we spent this time talking about this thing that's not in this week's edition, because this week's edition is so jam-packed. It is 40 pages. One of the largest papers we've done this year in 2024, and there's a very specific reason for that. It is our annual graduation edition. We celebrate the young students who are graduating high school in and around our area. It's not just Neepawa, but we also cover communities such as St. Rose, as Carberry, as Minnedosa, as Gladstone, so many other schools as well, some home schools, it's really a tremendous amount of time and effort that goes into it. And I'd love to take credit for it. I really would, but I can't. We really should have Diane Warner actually here to explain the process, because she's the one that put in all the time, all the effort to get these pages together, to put them on there. We put some of the ads on pages, but that's easy. That's nothing to worry about. But she went through that entire process. It is such a huge production. You look at a page and you think, oh, that's pretty good. But you don't even realize all the time and all the work and all the dedication that goes into setting up that page. And for Diane to do that, and it was 24 pages worth as well, I mean, this was no small edition of the graduation section. It seems to be getting bigger and bigger each and every year. So kudos to Diane on all that time and all that effort just to get her done. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, as Eoin said, it is a tremendous effort. I mean, you have all the photos from all the schools, and you got to edit those, you got to place those, you got to put them together and match up the names and all that. And yeah, it is really a tremendous effort. So we're very thankful for Diane having put this together for us. And, you know, hopefully we can, maybe we should do something to make up for her efforts and headaches along the way.
Well, it was a tremendous job, great effort on there. And if you have family members, relatives, sons, daughters, whomever, that are part of the graduation, always remember to pick up a copy of the Banner Press here in Neepawa or in 29 other surrounding communities throughout Western Manitoba. You can find the physical copy of them out there, out and about. And if you can't find it, the full version will be available online each and every week, every Friday morning on mywestman.ca. Now, just because we were able to do the graduation edition this week, that doesn't mean we got lazy. That doesn't mean we didn't do some other things. I'm going to say this right now. Even with our weather discussions aside, there is not enough time in a half hour for us to share with you every single solitary story that we were able to put together in this week's edition of the Banner Press. And anyone who knows me, you know, I'm not that egotistical. Now, quit laughing. Stop laughing out there. But I will say this, and I'll send kudos your way as well, Casper. This week's edition, we put in the work. Oh my God. We put in so much time and effort on so many variety of stories. It is so impressive. And it's always important to start it off with one of the stories we hope you will pay the most attention to. This one was brought to our attention, and Casper, you were able to get the details on this very special graduate who went through many trials and tribulations, including a few we couldn't even imagine.
Yeah, I mean, this happens to coincide right alongside our graduation section, as we've talked about before. But this is celebrating an individual, Kristen Wilson, who is currently in Winnipeg as she was attending University of Manitoba, and formerly it was from Glenella and McCreary areas. But she has just graduated from the University of Manitoba with distinction while beating cancer. She started her education in 2018, started experiencing symptoms of cancer in 2021, and was actively taking courses until February 2022, when she got her official diagnosis. She still pursued her degree throughout that time period, of course, leading up to graduation, as well as taking about a year off from recommendation from her doctor, of course, after some intensive rounds of treatment, just to take a break and then get back into it. And so I was very thankful to have the opportunity to talk to Kristen, talk about, you know, what she was going there to pursue, what she wants to do now that she has her degree and go into the future there, and just a bit about her experiences. So she shared that with me, and I was very happy to share that in the paper for this week with the readers, and of course give her congratulations.
That's right. You can find, of course, that story right on the front page of this week's edition of the Neepawa Banner Press. We wanted to feature it very prominently. This type of story, this type of feature, determination of an individual to achieve a goal through all these circumstances, those are those types of uplifting stories that we love to be able to share with you. And we're very proud that we were able to share it with you in this week's edition. But as it always seems to be from time to time, you come with the good, and then right next to it, you come with the bad. Mm-hmm. So the primary story on our front page is Kristen's story. But on a secondary, about a column and a half down the side, we put this other story because we thought it was going to be something people would be talking about as well. And that is a recent weapons and drug bust that occurred not only in the town of Neepawa, but also into the RM of North Cyprus Langford. It was the late edition of this week's newspaper. We got the press release from Sergeant David Taggart of the RCMP, always appreciative of the communications that we have with the RCMP on these types of items. We also have our monthly RCMP update feature in the paper. We decided this on its own was something we wanted to sort of share some more information on. It occurred over the weekend, and there were a few people on social media actually that were sharing one or two pictures of what's going on over here at this house, what's going on over here. There seemed to be a lot of cop cars over here, and they didn't know what was going on. So Monday there were a few people in town going, oh, what's going on? What was happening? I haven't heard anything. Have you heard anything? And then we got this information, and it was quite extraordinary to hear some of the details. I want you to pick up a copy of it. It's always important for you to get a physical version of the Banner Press and page through it for yourself. So we're only going to give you a little taste here. But it was a joint endeavor between several different portions of the RCMP units. They struck a couple different properties essentially at the exact same time. As we said, in the town of Neepawa and within the RM, 5 people were arrested at that time. In terms of what they found numerous different types of drugs, essentially bootleg, legal prescriptions, but being sold illegally, as well as cash, multiple firearms, including one prohibited weapon, and an array of stolen property. Sometimes you think when you live in a small town, you live in a community the size of Neepawa, you look at cities like Winnipeg, you look at cities like Brandon, and you think, well, sure, that's something that happens over there, but it can't happen here. It doesn't happen to us. We're just a small town. Nope. That's the reality of it. No matter where you live, you're going to run into things like this from time to time. That's the reality of it. So to see the RCMP, our local detachments, putting in the time, putting in the effort, putting in the background to sort of clean up the towns, as it were, it's commendable, so we share the details with you on that. You can find it on the front page. It carries over onto page A14 of this week's edition. And again, like I said, Casper, it's just one of those things of like, oh, wow, really? Here.
It really is. I mean, when things are typically as, well, not quiet, but, because the community, it's a very busy community,
yeah.
but, quiet in a sense. And then all of a sudden it's just like, oh,
yeah.
The police are really out, huh? Then you go like, whoa, and you get wondering, and then you hear the details, and you're like, whoa,
yep.
This actually happened. Yep.
Well, again, it's one of those things of if you've been a loyal and consistent reader of the Banner Press over the years, you know our coverage of that situation about 5-6 years ago in which there was a standoff in a house in Neepawa. You know of the situation that occurred last year in which there was a high-speed pursuit that came through town that turned into a bit of a standoff in Neepawa. We are just very fortunate, to be honest with you, that we have never had one of those incidents escalate to something even more. So, and it sort of talks into this week's edition of Ken Waddell's column, right in the center. He talks about crime, the issues of crime, the situations that we are dealing with as a society here in Canada, and some of the good and some of the bad mindsets and work that's being put into it. I'll use this cliche here, and it feels like maybe it's appropriate for Ken's column. It's a really cliche thing, Casper, and maybe you've heard it before. Everybody's a liberal until they get robbed.
Okay.
and maybe it's one of those ones. It's like, you may agree with Ken's estimates on how it should be handled. You may not, but that's what these columns are about. It's an opinion piece that's supposed to engage conversation. So hopefully it'll be something that you can engage some conversation in with friends or family, or you can always send a letter to the editor, and you can share your opinion on that or anything else in the pages of the Banner Press. All right, now that's the one bad news we had. The rest of this week's edition is nothing but good news and higher and higher and happier. So the next one as well is going to be happy for each and every one of you drivers here in Neepawa. We've talked about it so many times, the road conditions that we've had to deal with, the potholes, because of the mild winter that we had had. There were so many throughout Neepawa. Well, the town council has heard it. They understand. They got to drive too, and they're doing something about it. First off, as we've talked about in a previous edition of the newspaper, they're going to be doing a full repaving of a block of Mill Street and a block of Hamilton. They've approved the money being shifted over into that. It's going to be happening ASAP. If you've driven by Hamilton, over by the old Banner building, in fact, you know what we're talking about with that road. Or if you've driven on Mill, just right in front of the old RCMP building, the new training center, you know you have to go right and sideways and maybe up on two wheels for a bit just to avoid as many of those potholes as possible. Well, they've decided they're going to look after it, just clean slate that whole 9 yards. It's pricey though. But again, everything is. Mill, if I remember off the top of my head, is going to cost roughly around $187,000. Hamilton in and about $175,000. And there's going to be a whole clean slate there. So when you ask yourself, why aren't you doing more roads? Why aren't you just doing the full fill? Well, that's your answer. It's pricey. And, you know, you got to do a little bit at a time. And it's that balance between getting the roads done and keeping the taxes, the property taxes, at an even keel. So we could get them all done, but you're going to be paying a heck of a lot more in taxes next year.
Right.
But, you know.
And of course, you don't want to leave it too long, either for patching or for repaving, because, you know, time goes on. Well, it's not going to get any less expensive, at least not in the foreseeable future, the near future.
Nothing gets cheaper.
Yeah. So definitely tough to strike that balance, I'm sure. But I know that hearing this news, I was happy, and I'm pretty sure my car was happy too.
And on top of that as well, we talk a little bit about the pothole fixes that are going to be going on throughout. Every year, they usually rent a vehicle for about a week, and that's enough time to be able to do most of them. Not this year, though. So they've rented that same vehicle that's going to be a pothole fill, and they've rented it for an entire 4 weeks. They've trained some of their staff to be able to use the equipment. So that's what's been going on and what will be going on for the next couple weeks as well. So hopefully that'll get it looked after one way or another. Let's talk a little bit about sort of trails and roads where you're supposed to run into bumps. And I'm talking about the trail systems, the bike trail systems in the community of Minnedosa and in Neepawa. And Casper, you got a story right now talking about some of the festivities and fun that they were having over in Minnedosa.
I certainly do, and I have to say I was very happy to be able to get this paper in so quickly for this week. This story and another story that's coming up if we have the time for it, I actually had seen, like, literally just before my shift was ending on the Monday evening, and so I sent out emails really quick and was able to get responses back so fast. I was like spending the entire morning on Tuesday before we start building the paper just to get them written and in for this week. But this story is on the first ever Squirrel Chaser mountain bike race that the Squirrel Hills Trail Park was the venue for, and was put on by Valley Life Recreation. And it sounded like it was a great event. I mean, thankfully the weather that day wasn't as crazy as it was on Wednesday. It was nice. The weather held off there. The wind was down, and the temperature was very ideal for both the bikers and the spectators as well. I mean, they had over 100, roughly 100, over 100 people registered for the races, which was well past their expectations. And of course, they had a fantastic group of spectators there to view as well. But it sounded like it was a fantastic event. We were able to get some photos there from a couple different photographers, Sabine Chorley and Tracy Gregorish. Very thankful for those. I mean, what a great way for this event to really launch with the response it received.
Very nice to see that happening just down the road in Minnedosa. But we also had some fun and festivities right here in Neepawa as well. On Saturday the 8th, we had the Spring Fever bike races over at the High Life Back 40 Trail as well. This was a qualifier actually for the Manitoba Summer Games as well. Was able to get a few pictures in this week's edition, but we weren't able to get all the information in there. We were so jam-packed. But don't you worry, if you're curious about who ended up winning the events at the different categories, maybe a few of the other pictures that we weren't able to fit in, it's going to be appearing in the very next edition of the Banner Press, a listing of all the winners, the qualifiers, as well as some more pictures on that. I was able to get down there myself. Weather was beautiful at the time, and get a little bit. And if I remember correctly as well, NACTV as well was there on hand doing some filming. So you'll have to check your local listings right here on NACTV if you want to be able to see some of the highlights of that for yourself. So again, it was a lot of fun festivities that were happening both here and in Minnedosa. And speaking of fun and festivities, we're kicking off into the summer season. There's so many different events that are going on. Maybe some traditional ones that have been going on year over year, but a few new endeavors as well. And in actuality, there's this one that we're going to be talking about next, Casper. This is brand new for this year, isn't it?
Yes, you are absolutely right, Owen. This is another first-time event and another first for Minnedosa's Valley Life Recreation. They are going to be holding their Trail Pride event on June 22nd. It's their first time holding an event like this, so they're going to keep it fairly simple, but they'll have a bunch of different activities, some different group hiking or biking that you can enjoy, and all that sort of stuff at the Squirrel Hill Trail Park, starting at 10 a.m. there. In celebration of Pride Month and, of course, all of Minnedosa and area's Two-Spirit and LGBTQ plus community.
Oh, that is great that they were able to do something like that and expand upon the celebrations and the acknowledgements that go on with that throughout the month of June. This is not a good comparison, and this is not to be an offensive comparison in any way, shape, or form, but it's sort of the same thing we talked about when it comes to crime in a small town. A lot of people in small towns don't realize that there is a thriving and relevant community such as that within their communities. So anytime you're able to celebrate these types of things, I think it's great, quite honestly. These types of celebrations, acknowledgements, shouldn't just be in cities like Winnipeg or Toronto or Vancouver. I mean, there should be representation close to home as well.
Absolutely. I mean, especially smaller communities, I feel really benefit from this because, in particular, if you're a youth, you know, maybe you don't know how much of an accepting community that there is out there for you. And of course, there's a support aspect to it as well. So seeing Minnedosa able to hold something like this is definitely something that I'm very happy to see. And I mean, that's something that Valley Life Recreation is all about, in my estimation, with their outdoors initiative, branding and all that. Or sorry, I should say Outdoors for Everyone initiative. And you know, that's part of why they're holding this, to make sure that people know, hey, yeah, this space, that's for you. You're welcome here. You have a community here. And Gwen Yusick happened to mention this as well during the interview, but as part of that, they're also looking to hold celebrations in September in conjunction with the Indigenous community as well. So just building up those spaces in Minnedosa and just letting everyone know that, hey, yes, you're welcome here. And that's fantastic.
Well said. And it's those types of individual and community freedoms that we should be able to have in a small town. Those types of things are very important, I think, moving ahead. And like I said, these types of freedoms, they're earned over the years, and they shouldn't be disregarded, and they shouldn't be sort of forgotten, especially the individuals who fought and preceded us to give us those freedoms. And that segues into something I was able to attend recently in the community of Gladstone. Their Legion, always very strong in terms of their representation on events such as Remembrance Day, and they did it again this year during the D-Day celebrations, the 80th anniversary of D-Day, the invasion of Normandy. Quite honestly, each and every year we get further and further away from it, and these types of things get more and more important in terms of younger people learning about them, understanding what took place during World War II. We live in a difficult world right now, obviously, but we have no idea. As a collective, we have no clue the strife, the issue, the concern that they had to deal with during World War II, battling for freedoms. And there were young men that went over there and fought and died for those opportunities that maybe, quite maybe, we take for granted from time to time nowadays. And we got to quit with that. We really got to honestly stop with that. So being able to be there myself, I got a few pictures. I was able to write a story about Gladstone Legion's D-Day ceremony, showing the proper respect for those that fought on Juno, Omaha, the entire Normandy invasion. If I remember right, Operation Neptune was the name of the full operation for those 5 beaches that were stormed on that day on June 6, 1944. If you do get a moment, just read up on it. I'm very pleased to be able to share those types of things and very appreciative of the invitation from the Gladstone region that was sent out to me to be a part of it. So I was very thankful for them for making sure that we were a part of that as well. You can find that story in this week's edition of the Neepawa Banner Press. You can find that on page A7. So hopefully you will take a moment or two to go through that and to discuss it and learn a little bit for yourself. There's so much information. There's so much more we could be talking about with you in this week's edition of the Banner Press, but we only got a few minutes left right now, so we're going to have to do a bit of a rapid fire, as it were, to sort of get through a couple things. On that exact same page, on page A7, with the Gladstone ceremony, there's Casper's story about Waves of Hope. Just give us a quick synopsis on what that was about there.
Absolutely. So essentially that was a bit of a car rally put on by Waves of Hope as a bit of a fundraiser for themselves as well. So they invited everybody to come down, participate in it, and do a little bit of driving around, see the sights, and of course enjoy some food and whatnot after.
Oh, that is great. Also, we got to share with you a couple other things, really, just this rapid fire. That's why you always got to pick up a copy of the Banner Press. A half hour sometimes doesn't feel like it's enough. That's why you got to pick up a physical copy of it, because we still got to talk to you about Neepawa's own Shane Knighty, recently been inducted, is going to be inducted into the Manitoba Hockey Hall of Fame. He is a member of, he's played Neepawa minor hockey, he played professionally in the NHL, he's a representative with the Vegas Golden Knights right now. You got to catch that story. It's on page A16. Right next to our story from MP Dan Mazur, a bill he's been working on for several years to bring more accountability to the internet in terms of charging for internet access is gone through, and it's going to become law. So this is a 2-year process that he's gone through to bring some fairness to the internet in terms of charging and internet speeds. You can find that story on page A16 as well. We talked about a couple weeks ago the exhibit for Brad. I forget Brad's name.
Brad Mummery. Yep.
Yep. You've got that story in this week, don't you?
I sure do. Yeah, I was able to go down there for a few minutes during the fundraiser and gala opening for his exhibit. So went down there, took in the sights a little bit for the entire exhibit, and got a quick picture there as well. Definitely check it out. It's an interesting little setup there.
One last thing before we wrap it up for another week. The NACI Tigers hockey team did their annual check presentation from the money they were able to raise from Tigers Fight Cancer. And I was able to be there with my camera and get a little bit of information. So it's great to see that. It's great to share that with you as well. So much more we could have talked about this week. That's why, again, you got to pick up a copy of the Banner Press. And if you have any story suggestions, always remember to give us a call at 476-3401 or at news@neepawabanner.com. Once again, news@neepawabanner.com. So once again, for Casper, I'm Eoin. We thank you as always for tuning in to NAC TV and the story behind the stories. Have another fantastic week.